In the 1950s, American factories built trucks so over-engineered, so ridiculously tough that the companies themselves could not kill them off. Some of these specific models stayed on assembly lines for 20, 30, even 60-plus years. One of them, with a design rooted firmly in the 1950s, is still available brand new at your local dealer right now. These are 10 specific American truck models that simply refused to die when their golden decade ended. Number 10. Diamond T, Model 921. Let us start with a truck most people alive today have never even heard of. And that is a shame, because in the early 1950s, the Diamond T Model 921 was one of the sharpest-looking trucks on any American highway. The 921 was a conventional cab highway tractor built by the Diamond T Motor Car Company at their factory in Chicago, Illinois. Diamond T had been in business since 1905, founded by C.A. Tilt, and by the 1950s, the company had a stellar reputation earned partly through the legendary military trucks it built during World War II. The Model 980 tank transporter had hauled Allied armor across North Africa and Europe, and that wartime credibility carried enormous weight with commercial buyers in the post-war years. The 921 was a Class 8 highway tractor designed for long-haul over-the-road work. It sat on a heavy-duty steel ladder frame and was available with diesel engines from Cummins and Detroit Diesel, which were the dominant power plant suppliers for heavy trucks during this era. The Cummins NH Series Inline 6 and the Detroit Diesel 671 two-stroke Inline 6 were common choices, giving operators solid power and the kind of torque needed to move loaded trailers across mountain grades and flat prairie miles alike. What set the 921 apart visually was its styling. Diamond T invested heavily in the look of their trucks during the 1950s, and the 921 featured a distinctive chrome grille, clean body lines, and a level of exterior finish that made it one of the most handsome trucks of its generation. This was not just a work machine, it was a statement piece. Owner-operators who took pride in their rigs gravitated toward Diamond T because these trucks looked as good as they performed. In 1958, White Motor Company acquired Diamond T. Under White's ownership, Diamond T trucks continued to be produced, carrying forward the same basic engineering and design language. The 921 and its related models stayed in production through the early 1960s under the Diamond T name. Then in 1967, White merged Diamond T with REO Motors to create Diamond REO, and the trucks that emerged from that merger, heavy-duty vocational machines like dump trucks and concrete mixers, carried the 921's heavy frame DNA well into the mid-1970s. From its 1950s debut to the final Diamond REO trucks rolling off the line around 1975, the engineering philosophy that made the 921 great survived roughly 2 decades past its golden age. Number 9. Mack H63. Everyone knows the Mack B model. It gets all the glory. But Mack built another truck in the 1950s that deserves serious respect. The H63, Mack's cab-over engine workhorse. The Mack H-series was introduced in 1953, the same year as the B-series. While the B model was a conventional cab truck with its engine sitting ahead of the driver, the H-series placed the cab directly above the engine. This cab-over-engine layout, commonly called COE, made the H-series significantly shorter in overall length than its conventional cab sibling. That shorter length was critical in an era when many states enforced strict overall vehicle length laws. A COE tractor pulling a long trailer could stay within legal limits while maximizing cargo space, a direct advantage in the economics of freight hauling. The H63 was the tandem axle highway tractor variant of the H-series and became the model most commonly seen on long-haul routes. Like the B-series, the H63 was powered by Mack's own Thermodyne diesel engines. The ND673, a naturally aspirated inline-6 displacing 672 cubic inches, was the standard power plant. This engine produced around 170 to 211 horsepower depending on the configuration, which was competitive for the era. Mack also offered the ND673 turbocharged variant for operators who needed more power, pushing output higher for heavy loads and mountain grades. The H63 used Mack's own drivetrain components, their duplex and quadruplex transmissions, and Mack-built rear axles. This vertical integration was a Mack hallmark. They built their own engines, their own transmissions, and their own axles, meaning the entire drivetrain was engineered to work together as a unified system. For fleet operators, this meant consistent parts availability and service expertise at Mack dealerships nationwide. The cab itself was a tilt cab design, meaning the entire cab assembly could be tilted forward to expose the engine for maintenance and repair. It was a practical, workmanlike cabin, not spacious by any modern standard, but functional and built to last. Major trucking companies of the 1950s and early 1960s operated large fleets of H-63 tractors. Companies like McLean Trucking, Consolidated Freightways, and other major carriers valued the H-series for its reliability, its legal length advantage, and its Mack-built drivetrain. The H-series remained in production until 1962, giving it a 9-year run. It was eventually succeeded by the Mack F-series cabover, which carried the COE torch into the 1970s. Many H-63 tractors remained in active service well into the late 1960s, their overbuilt Mack components easily outlasting the production run of the model itself. Number 8. International Harvester R190. If any single truck model defined the American highway system in the 1950s, a strong case can be made for the International Harvester R190. The R-Series was introduced by International Harvester in 1953, built at their Springfield, Ohio manufacturing plant. The lineup covered a wide range of weight classes, from medium-duty models up to heavy Class 8 tractors. The R190 sat at the heavy end of that spectrum, a tandem-axle highway tractor designed to pull loaded trailers across state lines. International Harvester, headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, was an industrial giant during this period. The company manufactured farm equipment, construction machinery, and a full line of commercial trucks. Their dealer network was one of the largest in the country, which gave the R190 a massive practical advantage. No matter where an R190 driver was in the continental United States, an international dealer with parts and trained mechanics was almost never far away. Under the hood, the R190 was available with several engine options. International offered their own gasoline engines for lighter applications, but the heavy-duty R190 highway tractors typically ran diesel power plants from Cummins or Detroit Diesel. The Cummins NHB 600 Inline 6 and the Detroit Diesel 671 were popular choices, both proven engines with established service networks of their own. Later in the production run, more powerful options became available, including the Cummins NH220 and the Detroit Diesel 8V71, a V8 two-stroke that delivered substantially more horsepower. The R190 featured a steel cab with a distinctive wraparound windshield design that was modern for its time. Visibility was good, the driving position was reasonable, and the controls were laid out in a straightforward manner. These trucks were not luxurious, but they were built to be operated by professional drivers doing long shifts day after day. The R-Series had an extraordinarily long production run. Various R-Series models remained in production into the mid-1960s, and the platform directly influenced International's next generation of heavy trucks. The Lodestar, introduced in 1962, and the Transstar, which served the heavy-haul market, both owed significant engineering debts to the R-Series platform. The basic design principles, the frame architecture, the drivetrain packaging, the cab-on-frame construction, carried forward for years. International Harvester's truck division eventually became Navistar International in 1986, after a severe financial crisis nearly destroyed the parent company. The International truck brand survived that crisis and is still active today, now owned by Traton Group, a Volkswagen subsidiary. The modern International LT traces its corporate lineage directly back through the Transstar, the Lodestar, and ultimately the R190 that built the brand's highway reputation in the 1950s. Number 7. White 3000. The White Motor Company of Cleveland, Ohio, was one of America's heavyweight truck manufacturers, and in the 1950s, the White 3000 was their bread-and-butter conventional cab model. The White brothers, Thomas, Windsor, Rollin, and Walter, had founded the company in 1900, initially building steam-powered automobiles. The transition to gasoline trucks came early, and by mid-century, White was a serious player in the heavy-duty segment. The 3000 series represented their mainline conventional cab offering for the 1950s market. The White 3000 was a Class 7 and Class 8 platform, available in multiple configurations. Single-axle and tandem-axle tractors for highway work, straight trucks for regional hauling, and chassis cab units for specialty body applications. The truck featured a conventional hood-forward layout with a steel cab and White's own robust frame design. Engine options on the 3000 typically included Cummins diesels, as White did not manufacture their own engines for most of their heavy-duty lineup during this period. The Cummins NH and JT series inline-six engines were common installations, offering reliable power in the 150 to 200-plus horsepower range typical of 1950s Class 8 trucks. Transmissions were sourced from Fuller and Spicer, both well-established drivetrain suppliers. The 3000 was a solid, capable truck, but White's real impact on the industry during this period came from their aggressive acquisition strategy. White purchased Sterling in 1951, Autocar in 1953, REO in 1957, and Diamond T in 1958. This buying spree gave White control over a massive portfolio of truck brands, each serving different market segments. The 3000 series itself evolved through the late 1950s and into the 1960s with updated styling, improved cabs, and more powerful engine options. White's subsequent models, the 4000 series, and eventually the Road Boss and Road Commander of the 1970s, were direct evolutionary descendants of the 3000 platform. The basic engineering approach, the frame design philosophy, and the conventional cab layout remained consistent even as specific components were modernized. White Motor Company eventually filed for bankruptcy in 1980 and was acquired by Volvo in 1981. But the White brand did not disappear immediately. Volvo continued selling trucks under the White GMC name through the late 1980s and into the 1990s. The final trucks to carry any version of the White name were essentially the last generation of a design lineage that traced back to the 3000 series and its 1950s origins, a survival span of roughly 4 decades. Number 6. Autocar DC. If there was ever a truck built specifically for punishment, it was the Autocar DC. Autocar, founded in 1897 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was one of the oldest vehicle manufacturers in the United States. By the time the 1950s arrived, the company had already been building trucks for over 4 decades and had developed a very clear identity. Autocar built heavy-duty vocational trucks, machines designed for off-road construction sites, mining operations, logging roads, and refuse collection routes, places where pavement was optional and breakdowns were unacceptable. The DC designation stood for Diesel Conventional, and the DC series became Autocar's signature product line from the 1950s onward. These were not highway cruisers. The Autocar DC was a thick-framed, heavily reinforced, purpose-built machine with a conventional cab layout and an extremely rugged chassis designed to handle repeated punishment over terrible terrain. The DC came standard with diesel power. Cummins engines were the most common installation, with the NH and NTC series inline sixes being popular choices. Detroit diesel 2-stroke engines were also available. Autocar worked closely with customers to spec each truck for its specific application, meaning a DC ordered for a logging operation might have a completely different drivetrain, axle configuration, and frame setup than one ordered for refuse collection. One of the Autocar DC's most notable features was its setback front axle design, which improved weight distribution and turning capability, critical advantages for trucks working in tight construction sites or navigating narrow mountain logging roads. The cab was functional and stripped down, with large glass areas for visibility and controls positioned for operator convenience rather than aesthetic appeal. White Motor Company acquired Autocar in 1953, but the brand kept its identity. When White went bankrupt and Volvo took over in 1981, Autocar survived again. The DC series and its descendants continued to be built, focusing increasingly on the refuse and heavy vocational segments. Through subsequent ownership changes, including acquisition by Grand Vehicle Works Holdings in the early 2000s, the Autocar brand survived into the 2020s. The company now builds specialized refuse trucks and terminal tractors at a facility in Birmingham, Alabama, From the 1950s DC series to its modern refuse vehicles, Autocar has maintained an unbroken identity as a builder of rugged, purpose-built American trucks for over 70 years. The specific applications have narrowed, but the DNA of the original DC, overbuilt, durable, and designed for the hardest work available, lives on. Number 5. Peterbilt Model 281. If only one 1950s truck could be called a movie star, it would be the Peterbilt 281, and it earned that title by trying to murder Dennis Weaver on a California highway. The Model 281 was introduced by Peterbilt Motors Company in 1954. Peterbilt, founded in 1939 in Oakland, California, was a premium truck builder that manufactured each truck to individual customer specifications. Unlike the mass production approach of International Harvester or Ford, Peterbilt hand-built trucks in relatively small volumes, with aluminum cabs that reduced weight and resisted corrosion. The 281 was a conventional cab Class 8 highway tractor with a distinctive rounded hood profile and clean, purposeful lines. It was built on a heavy-duty steel frame and was available with the major diesel engines of the era. Cummins, Caterpillar, and Detroit Diesel all offered power plants suitable for the 281. The Cummins NH series and the Caterpillar D series were particularly popular installations. Transmissions were typically Fuller Road Rangers, the dominant manual gearboxes in heavy-duty trucking during the 1950s and 1960s. The 281 found its strongest market in the western United States. Long distances, steep mountain passes through the Rockies and Sierra Nevada, extreme heat in desert valleys, and heavy loads from logging, agriculture, and construction. The West Coast demanded a truck that could handle all of it, and the 281 delivered. Its aluminum cab construction was also advantageous for operators running close to legal weight limits, where every pound of truck weight saved meant another pound of paying freight. Then, in 1971, a young director named Steven Spielberg used a weathered, grimy 1955 Peterbilt 281 as the antagonist in his television film Duel. The truck, a rusty tanker hauler with no visible driver, relentlessly pursued a terrified motorist played by Dennis Weaver across the California desert. The film was a massive success and launched Spielberg's career. That specific Peterbilt 281 became one of the most recognized vehicles in cinema history. But the 281's real legacy was what came after it. The 281 evolved into the Model 351 in the early 1960s, which incorporated an updated cab and more modern styling. The 351 then evolved into the Model 359 in 1967, which became arguably the most iconic owner-operator truck of the 1970s and 1980s. The 359 gave way to the Model 379 in 1987, which dominated long-haul trucking for 2 decades, and the 379 was succeeded by the Model 389, which is still in production today. That is a direct, unbroken evolutionary chain. 281 to 351 to 359 to 379 to 389. Over 70 years of continuous development, all tracing back to that 1954 original. The Peterbilt 281 did not just live past the 1950s, it became the ancestor of an entire dynasty. Number 4. Freightliner Model WFT-4264. Here is a truck with one of the strangest origin stories in the entire history of American manufacturing. The original Freightliner was never supposed to be sold to anyone. In 1942, Leland James, the founder of Consolidated Freightways, one of the largest trucking companies in the western United States, grew frustrated with the trucks available on the market. He felt they were far too heavy. Federal and state weight laws limited the total combined weight of a truck and its trailer, and every extra pound of truck weight meant one less pound of revenue-generating cargo. James decided that if nobody would build him a lighter truck, he would build his own. The result was Freightliner, established in Portland, Oregon. The earliest Freightliner models were cab-over-engine designs that used aluminum extensively in their construction. Aluminum cabs, aluminum frame components, and aluminum body panels wherever possible. This was radical thinking for the 1940s truck industry, which was built almost entirely around steel. By the early 1950s, Freightliner's aluminum COE trucks, designated as WFT models, Western Freightliner Tilt Cab, had proven themselves so thoroughly in Consolidated Freightways' own fleet that other trucking companies began demanding access to them. In 1951, Freightliner signed a sales and distribution agreement with White Motor Company, and the trucks began reaching the broader market as white Freightliner models. The WFT-4264 and similar models from this era were powered by Cummins diesel engines, typically the NH series inline 6 paired with Fuller transmissions. Their aluminum cab-over design delivered a weight savings of roughly 1,500 to 2,000 pounds compared to equivalent steel cab competitors. For a trucking company running hundreds of trucks on thousands of routes, that weight savings translated directly into higher revenue on every single load. In 1977, Freightliner ended its distribution agreement with White and began selling trucks independently. The brand exploded. The Freightliner FLC and FLA conventional cab models of the late 1970s and 1980s, direct descendants of the weight-conscious design philosophy established in the 1950s WFT models, became enormously popular. Then, in 1981, Daimler-Benz acquired Freightliner, providing the resources for massive expansion. The Freightliner FLD120, introduced in 1987, became one of the best-selling Class 8 trucks in North American history. The Freightliner Cascadia, launched in 2007, pushed the brand into total market dominance. Today, Freightliner is the #1 selling heavy-duty truck brand in North America. A truck that started as a private fleet experiment in the 1940s, entered the commercial market in the 1950s, and was never supposed to be sold at all, now outsells every competitor on the continent. The 1950s were not the end of the Freightliner story. They were the prologue. Number 3. Ford C600. The Ford C600 might be the most underappreciated truck in American history, and its production run proves it beyond any doubt. Introduced in 1957, the Ford C-Series was a cab-over engine lineup that included the C550, C600, C700, C750, and C800, covering medium-duty to heavy-duty weight classes. The C600 sat in the medium-duty sweet spot and became the most versatile and widely used model in the range. Production took place at Ford's Louisville assembly plant in Louisville, Kentucky. The cab-over design placed the driver above or slightly forward of the engine, creating a short bumper-to-back-of-cab dimension that was perfect for urban delivery work, municipal service, and any application where maneuverability in tight spaces was essential. The C600's tilt cab feature allowed the entire cab to be tilted forward for engine access, a practical maintenance feature that mechanics appreciated. Early C600 models were powered by Ford's own gasoline V8 engines, including the 292 cubic inch and 332 cubic inch FE Series 5/8. As the model evolved through the 1960s and 1970s, diesel options were added. Caterpillar 3208 V8 diesels and Cummins engines became available, giving operators the fuel efficiency and longevity advantages that diesel power provided for high-mileage commercial applications. The C600 found its way into an astonishing variety of roles. Fire departments across America became some of the most loyal C-Series customers. Hundreds of fire departments purchased C-Series chassis and had custom firefighting apparatus built on them by companies like American LaFrance, Seagrave, and Pierce. The short cab-over design was ideal for fire trucks because it kept the overall vehicle length manageable while allowing space for pump equipment, hose beds, and aerial ladder devices. Beverage distributors like Coca-Cola and Pepsi bottlers ran fleets of C600 delivery trucks. School bus manufacturers built on the C-Series platform. Utility companies, municipal public works departments, and private construction firms all adopted the C600 and its siblings for everything from dump truck duty to crane carrier service. The Ford C-Series remained in continuous production from 1957 until 1990. An extraordinary 33 years on the assembly line. To put that in perspective, the truck debuted during the Eisenhower administration and was still being built when the Berlin Wall fell. Ford updated the styling, improved the cabs, added modern powertrains, and upgraded safety features over the decades. But the fundamental concept, a compact, maneuverable tilt cab workhorse, never changed. When production finally ended, tens of thousands of C-Series trucks remained in active service. Many fire departments continued running their C-Series apparatus well into the 2000s and even beyond, their proven reliability making replacement a low priority. A truck born in the golden 1950s was still answering emergency calls in the 21st century. Number 2. Mack B-61. This is the truck. When someone says the words classic American truck, the image in their head is almost certainly a Mack B-61. Chrome bulldog on the hood, rounded fender lines, that impossibly solid squared-off stance. The B-61 is not just a truck, it is the truck. The Mack B-series was introduced in 1953, and the lineup included numerous variants designated by different model numbers for different weight classes and applications. The B-20 was a single-axle model, the B-30 was for city delivery work, the B-42 was a short wheelbase tractor, and the B-67 featured a setback front axle. But the B-61, the tandem-axle highway tractor, was the star of the entire lineup. This was the model that defined Mack's identity for an entire generation. Built at Mack's manufacturing plant in Allentown, Pennsylvania, the B-61 was powered by Mack's own Thermodyne diesel engines. The standard power plant was the END-673, a naturally aspirated inline-six diesel displacing 672 cubic inches. This engine produced approximately 170 to 205 horsepower, depending on the specific rating. For operators who wanted more muscle, the END-673 added a turbocharger that pushed output above 230 horsepower. Later in the production run, the END-711, displacing 711 cubic inches, offered even more power and torque. What made the B-61's drivetrain special was Mack's vertical integration. The company built its own engines, its own transmissions, and its own rear axles. The Mack triplex, duplex, and quadruplex manual transmissions were designed specifically to work with Mack engines and Mack axles. This meant the entire powertrain was engineered as a single unified system rather than assembled from components made by different manufacturers. For operators, this translated into smoother performance, easier servicing, and parts availability through Mack's dedicated dealer network. The B-61's cab was a steel, fixed-mount design, not a tilt cab. It was functional and workmanlike, with a bench seat, large windshield for good visibility, and instruments positioned for easy reading. The cab was not luxurious, but it was durable, and it kept working for hundreds of thousands of miles with minimal fuss. Over the full production run from 1953 to 1966, Mack produced approximately 127,786 B-series trucks across all variants. The B-61 accounted for a large share of that total. These trucks went into long-haul freight, construction, logging, mining, refuse collection, and fire service. There was virtually no heavy-duty application where you would not encounter a Mack B-61. Production ended in 1966, 13 years after introduction. The Mack R-series replaced the B model and went on to have its own legendary career, lasting into the 1990s. But the B-61 never truly disappeared from the landscape. Thousands remained in working service for years after production ceased, and today restored B-61s are among the most prized collectible trucks in the world, commanding serious money at auctions and drawing crowds at truck shows from coast to coast. Number 1. Kenworth W900. There is only one truck on this entire list that you can walk into a dealer right now, today in 2026, and order brand new. It is the Kenworth W900, and its story is nothing short of extraordinary. The W900 was introduced in 1961 by Kenworth Truck Company, which had been founded in 1923 in Seattle, Washington. By the late 1950s, Kenworth had established itself as a premium custom-order truck builder. Unlike mass-market manufacturers that produced identical trucks by the thousands, Kenworth built each unit to the individual buyer's specifications. Engine, transmission, axle ratio, wheelbase, cab configuration, paint scheme, everything was chosen by the customer. This made Kenworth trucks expensive, but it also made them exactly right for the operator who ordered them. The W900 was the natural culmination of everything Kenworth had learned building custom trucks during the 1950s. It was a conventional cab Class 8 tractor with a long hood, traditional fender lines, and a cab designed for both comfort and durability. The W in the designation stood for the truck's width. It was designed for western states where roads were wider and length restrictions were more generous, allowing for a longer, more traditional hood profile. From the beginning, the W900 offered the most powerful diesel engines available. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Cummins, Caterpillar, and Detroit Diesel all supplied engines for the W900. The Cummins NTC 350 and NTC 400 inline sixes, the Caterpillar 3406 inline six, and the Detroit Diesel 8V92 V8 two-stroke were all common installations. Transmissions were primarily Fuller Road Rangers, 13-speed and 18-speed manual gearboxes that gave drivers precise control over the drivetrain. The W900L, the long hood variant, elevated the model into icon status. With its extended hood stretching gracefully ahead of the cab, the W900L became the definitive image of American trucking. This was the truck that appeared on mudflaps, on trucker hats, and in films. It was the truck that owner-operators aspired to own, the one that signaled you had made it in the trucking business. Kenworth, which has been a subsidiary of PACCAR since 1945, continued evolving the W900 decade after decade. Modern W900s use PACCAR MX-13 engines and Cummins X15 power plants producing up to 605 horsepower. They feature modern electronics, advanced emission systems, comfortable sleeper cabs with flat-screen televisions and premium mattresses and air-ride suspensions. But the fundamental design, the long hood, the traditional grille, the upright stance, has remained faithful to the original vision. In an era when the trucking industry has moved overwhelmingly toward aerodynamic, fuel-efficient designs with sloped hoods, integrated bumpers, and wind-cheating profiles, the W900 remains defiantly traditional. Kenworth introduced the T680 as their modern aerodynamic flagship, and it sells very well. But they have never discontinued the W900 because the demand simply will not die. As of 2026, the Kenworth W900 has been in continuous production for 65 years. It has outlived not just individual truck models but entire truck companies. Diamond T is gone. Brockway is gone. White is gone. The Kenworth W900 is still here, still being built, and still being ordered by customers who want nothing else. That is not living past a golden age. That is making the golden age permanent. If you learned something new today, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which one of these 10 models is your all-time favorite. We will see you in the next one.